Hey everyone, and welcome to the Yeah Hours for Homework 5, which is Python programs. My name is Anand Shankar. I'm one of the section leaders for this class, and I'll be recording today's help session video. The slides were by Jonathan Kula, so full credit to him on that. First, we're going to talk about transitioning into Python from JavaScript. So welcome to the Python land. And the key difference with Python is that instead of being run in the browser as JavaScript is, your Python code is actually run in an interpreter which runs on your laptop or your machine. If you've used Python before, we're asking that you install version 3.8. You can keep version 3.8 alongside whatever versions that you have right now of Python running on your machine. In particular, if you're a Mac user, your operating system probably ships with version 2.7 of Python, but we ask that you upgrade to 3.8. We're going to be using the IDE called PyCharm, the Integrated Development Environment. And we've got instructions on the website at this link, which you can go ahead and click to get all set up. And if you have issues with getting set up, please don't hesitate to contact the core staff. So now we're going to talk about some, in transitioning to Python, there are some kind of philosophical questions which we're now going to go over. The first is why Python over JavaScript? Is it better or worse? And the answer is that they're not really better and worse. It's more like they are kind of complement each other. So JavaScript is run in the web browser, and it can be served over the internet alongside, website content. And so we can use JavaScript then to make website content dynamic without having to download anything else on your machine. You've probably seen, you just double click your HTML file, it runs some JavaScript in the web browser, and boom, you're done. Python, however, runs on your machine, but it has a great reputation for the extremely large number of libraries, in other words, kind of pre-existing code that has been built to help you solve problems, in particular in the scientific computing and machine learning spaces. So if you're going to do anything with regard to machine learning, you're going to be using Python. So it's a great language to learn. Even aside from machine learning, it's still a great language to learn because a lot of systems are powered using Python. Moreover, Python has a great reputation for having this kind of English-like syntax that's relatively easier to pick up than certain other programming languages. The next thing that people kind of wonder is one programming language useful for a course? Why are we doing multiple? And yes, one language can be enough for a course. In fact, many kind of Stanford CS courses only teach one language, but we've chosen to teach both. And yes, it's useful. We wouldn't waste our time teaching two languages if we thought that it wasn't going to be useful to you. In reality, most complex projects, especially those that involve web programming, are going to use kind of two or more separate programming languages. And we chose Python as a counterpart to JavaScript because they really do complement each other. And now the answer is, should I even bother learning multiple programming languages? And the answer is yes, they have different use cases, and Python and JavaScript are also pretty complementary. And so you cover a lot of more ground with your knowledge and you gain more coding maturity. And if you're wondering, I'm learning two programming languages, am I going to be prepared for 106B or X or future CS classes? And the answer is yes, you definitely, will still be prepared. As a matter of fact, both, the regular kind of 106A offering is using only Python, so you're certainly not going to be missing out. There are some differences between C++, the language that's used in 106B and X, and Python and JavaScript, most notably the notion of typing. So in C++, if you declare a variable, you have to declare a type that the variable will hold. So instead of just saying let x equals 4, you're going to say, I'm going to create the variable x, I'm going to assign to it the value 4, and I promise that x will only ever hold an integer, or something like that. But you'll explore that notion more in CS106B or X if you choose to take it. We certainly hope you do. All right, so once you have your development environment set up, again, we have instructions up on the course website. We can start learning some new syntax, and let's delve into that right now. So the first difference between Python and JavaScript is regarding blocks and indentation. So in JavaScript, we have a curly braces here that denote blocks. The indentation also exists, but it's more a function of style than functionality. In other words, JavaScript knows kind of what blocks are nested and not nested because of the curly braces. Indentation is more of a visual kind of thing that we use for ourselves rather than a necessity of the language. In Python, however, there are no squiggly braces. You'll notice that a block starts with a colon. And so we use indentation as a way to know what's nested and what's not nested. So we have these side by side. Again, note the lack of squiggly braces in Python. Note the indentation in Python. And note that, in both cases, we have this if-else conditional logic stuff. And some things to note are that Python uses colons and indentation. Bad indentation is now a matter of functionality in Python. It's not just a matter of style. And so you can actually get syntax errors if your indentation is off. Also, there are no semicolons in Python. It's very nice. Note that because white space is actually important, we don't allow for empty blocks in Python. And so what you can do is you can put the word pass in the block, and that basically means, hey, do nothing. So if you want to have an empty block that you're going to come back to later, for example, you put the word pass, and then it's no longer a syntax error. In JavaScript, when we declare variables, we have this let keyword that appears before the variable name that we want to use. In Python, we just say variable. There's no let or anything in front of it. And then we just put the variable value that we want. Again, note the lack of semicolons. In JavaScript, again, for constants, we put the word const in all upper caps. The variable name follows. Whereas in Python, we just have a variable name in all upper caps, and we just don't change it in the code. Again, no let, no const. Python, we use the print function, which functions similarly to JavaScript's console.log. In JavaScript, comments begin with a double slash, and in Python, comments begin with slash star, and then they end with a star slash if it's a multi-line comment. In Python, comments begin with the hash symbol. Every line must have the hash symbol. And we usually use the hash if it's a one-line comment, and then we use multi-line comments enclosed between kind of triple quote marks. In JavaScript, we use true and false in all lowercase, and in Python, true and false, the Boolean values must be in kind of the first letter must be in uppercase, and yes, the syntax matters, or the capitalization matters. It would be a syntax error if you wrote true with the lowercase t in Python. Same for false. In JavaScript, when we want to talk about nothingness or emptiness, we use null or undefined. In Python, we use the keyword none. And yes, none must be in uppercase as well. Or the first letter of none must be in uppercase. In JavaScript, for if statements, we have this syntax with squiggly braces, parens, and in Python, we have lack of parens, colons, and indentation. This is similar to the example that we saw before. Again, one thing to note is that if we have if and then else if, in Python it's if, and then we shorten else if to elif, E-L-I-F, and it functions the same as an else if block in JavaScript. We check the if condition. If the if condition is not true, then we jump to the elif block, and then we check this condition, and if that condition is true, then we enter this condition here. We execute this code here. While loops function in very similar ways. In terms of the syntax and the logic behind how a while loop works. Note that we have the condition, and then we execute the block if the condition is true, and then we check the condition again, and that's the same idea kind of over here in JavaScript land. For loops, however, are very different. So let's actually first talk about JavaScript for loops. In JavaScript, you have these three components of a for loop. This is the initialization step, this is the condition check, and this is the increment step, or the step more broadly. And that's kind of how the way that the while loop works and the for loop works. They're exactly equivalent to one another. In Python, a for loop will loop over a collection of values. In other words, if you have a list or some kind of what's called an iterable, something that you can iterate over, then that's how for loops work in Python. So this range 10 thing basically returns a collection of numbers, an ordered collection of numbers between 0 and 9 inclusive. Note that the 10 here is exclusive. In other words, we don't go up to 10. And since we only specified one argument to the range function, we implicitly begin at 0, which is inclusive. So this code here would print 0 through 9, each number on a different line, and then the for loop terminates. Therefore, if we say I equals 100, this does absolutely nothing, because I is equal to 0, we print 0, we said I equals 100, but then I gets incremented to the next value in this collection of values, which is 1. Again, remember that Python loops kind of loop over something that you can iterate over. So here for I in the list hello there, I would first be hello, and then I would next be there. And so we print out hello, and then we print out there. Now, again, note that we can just use any name here, and that's no problem. It doesn't have to be I. And here we can actually iterate over strings as well. Strings are also what is known as iterable in Python. And the way that that works is I would first be P, and then it would be Y, and then T, and then H, and then O, and then N. It might be better styled to call this char, just because we're looping over characters. Note here about the range, we're using the range function again in this example, but we have len Python as the argument, so Python's length is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so this is equivalent to for I in range 6. The arithmetic operators are the same. We have plus, minus, times, divide, and modulo. And then Python gives us a few more. So I times 2 is I squared, I to the power of 2. And I double divide 2 is floor division. So it does I divided by 2, and then it rounds down to the nearest integer value. Boolean operators are different. So in JavaScript, this is A ampersand B, which is read as A and B. And here we have A, literally the word and, which is a keyword in Python, and then B. And the same applies for or and for not. You actually write out the English word or the English word not. You don't put a double bar or an exclamation mark. The comparison operators are mostly the same. We have less than, the relational operators less than equal to, greater than equal to. Equals is 2 equal signs, and not equals is slightly different as well. Note these notes over here. Python also gives us the useful in operator to see if C is in the string, the collection. That is true. But then we look for the element C in the list A, B, C. Neither A is equal to C, nor BC is equal to C. So we say that C is not in this list, A, B, C. So this in operator is very useful for checking membership. Python has some handy syntax, so if you want to say if 0 is less than I and then I is less than 1, you can just write it kind of like this, the same way you do in math. You can also mix and match less than or equal to operators with the less than operator. This syntax is very kind of convenient. In JavaScript, we have function definitions that start with the word function, then you have the name, and then you have various arguments. In Python, we replace the word function with def, and then we have the function name, and then arguments go here. Arguments, in other words, parameters. And then we put the word pass again because this is an empty block, but we can't have a literally empty block in Python because that would be a syntax error. We can also write my function using camel case with an uppercase F and no underscore. That's also fine. Function calling, you call a function the same way. You can pass whatever arguments you want to the function. Okay, and here, this code in JavaScript would actually not compile because this variable is declared inside the block of the if statement. But in Python, this code actually will work because the variable is kind of hoisted up to a higher level of scope. So variables that are declared within a block, the parent block also has access. This is a very dangerous kind of thing because oftentimes when we write code like this, we don't want to have access to variable down here. A more dangerous kind of situation is if we say if false, so in other words, this code will never get executed, and so variable is never defined, but then we print variable down here, this will not work because variable was not defined. Let me go back to the previous slide. This does work because variable is defined, because if true, so this block gets executed. So this is a really dangerous feature of Python, so be sure to kind of guard against this when you're writing your code. It's really good style to do, if you're going to write code like this, say if false, variable is 1, else variable equals 0. So this is a binary condition, meaning that either the if block gets executed or the else block get executed. But we're guaranteed that one of those blocks will get executed, and for this reason, printing variable is totally fine here because variable will always be defined. In terms of style differences, we've been getting on your case in IGs to use camel case. So camel case is where the first letter is in lowercase, and then every other kind of letter that starts a new word is in uppercase. Python usually uses snake case, so that's where all the letters are in lowercase, and then you use an underscore. We're not sure if Python kind of uses snake case because Python is a type of snake. Whatever the case may be, it is industry standard, get it, for snake case to be used with Python. And so since we've been doing camel case all quarter and we've been hammering that in IGs, we'll accept either camel case or snake case in Python, but you should pick one. In other words, either do camel case or do snake case, but don't do both. So now I'm going to pause the video, and in the next video, we're going to talk about assignment 5.